Hi everybody, welcome back. In this video we're going to continue our series on learning Python and doing it through the lens of how we would otherwise be doing these things in Excel. And I'm following this textbook here. Today we're going to be looking at different data types in Python. You can click on this link on this UPFIE, Using Python for Introductory Econometrics.net website. You can check out the book there and read it online. In the first chapter, we can see some of the basic data types here: integers, floats, strings, booleans, lists, and dictionaries. We're going to be talking about some of those and how we can deal with those in Python. So also in the downloads here, we have all the scripts from each chapter. And so in this chapter, we start looking at objects in Python. And so here is objects in Python. This is the first script. And ultimately, what we're looking at, Python is an object-oriented programming language. And so all these different data types can be thought of as different objects. And it's a little bit more advanced than the way we think about these things in Excel. But technically in Excel, we can also see a little bit about the data types for the types of data that we put in here. So there's a type function, and you can see that if this is a number, it's going to be a 1, text is a 2, so that's the same as a string. Logical value, which is Boolean, is 4, and an error is 16, and so on and so forth. So we can type in the type. It's going to return a 1. That means that's a number. This is also a number. It doesn't disaggregate numbers into integers versus floating point numbers or anything like that. But then 2 here, that means it's a text or a string. You can see text is number 2. So that's just generally how we see data types in Python or in Excel. We can do the same thing in Python. So we're going to use the same one. So here I just did a 1 plus 1 for 2, 2.5, and some text. So if we start with result 1 as a variable, and we do 1 plus 1, run that with F9. Okay, that number 2 is stored inside of result 1. So we can make a comment here to determine the type of result 1. So the type, new variable, we're going to store this in a variable. The type of result 1 is equal to just the same formula function as Excel. It's also called type. And then we just type in result 1. Okay, so what this formula is doing here is doing exactly what Excel is doing over here, except it's storing it in a variable called type result 1, and we can check that out by printing the result. Let's print result, and we're going to print type of result, type of result 1, our variable. And in curly brackets, we put the variable that we're interested in looking at the type. So type result 1 is the variable, and we print that, F9, and we see that the type of result 1, which if we also wanted to print out result 1, we can do that too and verify that that's the number 2. Result 1 is equal to 2, and the type of result 1 is an integer. Okay, and so that's an object class, and that's integer. Okay, we can do the same thing. This one I'll just copy directly. Actually, both of these I'll copy directly. And result 2 is 2.5. The type of result 2 is a floating point number. Okay, and then result 3 is a string, and so we're going to see that if we put that in there, result 3 is a string, which is the same thing that's represented by the number 2 in Excel. Okay, and so these data types are a little simpler, and what we're going to do is kind of keep working up. One thing that I'll do one more. So let's just say we have something equal to true, right? And if we have type, this logical value is equal to 4. So there we have 4. And we could do something for looking for truth here. And we're going to call that result 4. To see that this is a Boolean. B-O-O-L for Boolean. And if we're thinking about Booleans, what we can really be thinking about are the different logical operators, and I'll just show you that really briefly in Python. And so here we have, also in some are similar to what you'll see in Excel, some are not. So, if you wanted to look at if x is equal to y, in Excel, if we want to check if 5 is equal to 4, then to get the Boolean result of that, we check is 5 equal to 4, and that's false. There we only have one equal sign. In Python, we would be using 2. The output is false. Okay, so anyway, these are the logical operators in Python that you'll be able to use for some things as well. Okay, next let's check out lists. Okay, here we're just thinking this could be a list of numbers, it could be a list of strings, so it could be cat, dog, mouse, and cow. A list of strings or a list of numbers. And what I've done here, in Excel you have an index of for the list, but in Python that's automatically done. So let me show you the list script. Okay, and so here we have a list 1, 5, 41.3, and 2. And that list is called example list. So it's just a list of numbers, which we can really think of as this. But in Excel, if we're trying to access some of these list entries, probably one of the more common uses in Excel is going to be the VLOOKUP function. And so if we want to find the first value in our list, we can do a VLOOKUP. We want to look for the first value in the list out of this table array. Let's go ahead and make it big. Often you're going to want to hit F4 to get the cell locks in place there, and that way you can use it multiple times. We want the second item out of the table. We should really make it like this. We want the second item out of the table, and we want an exact match. So 0 for false. And so the first item in the list is 1. Right? If you want to replace an item, okay, we want the third item to be changed to a 3. And so that's actually going to change there. One important note about lists in Python is that although you might be tempted to number things 1 through 4, in Python, indexes start at 0. So this would be the list index, and this would be the list value in Python. So if we wanted to find this first value in Python, instead of searching for a 1, we want to find what's in the 0 index. That's really important, and let me show you another idea about, especially once you're trying to access multiple items in a list, that's going to change as well. So let's go ahead and start doing this in Python, and then I'll show you what we want to be doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and stick to this one. Now we're going to do lists. Up here we did object types. So in our list, first we're going to define a list. We can call that example list. And to make a list, you use square brackets. So 1, 5, 41.3, and 2.0. Okay, we run that, and let's check out example list. Oops. Okay. There we go. 1, 5, 41.3, and 2.0. In the book, they actually print out a a full thing as we've done before, but that's another. Actually that is useful. That's the type. So we want to look at the type of example list. Whoops, I've lost an E. Okay. The type of example list is a list. So we do see that indeed we're working with a list. Now, we want to access the first entry of the list, which means the 0 index. And so to do that, we'll call it entry 1. And this is equal to example list. By the way, if you tab over and you already have a variable that's similar to what you've named, hit tab and it'll complete the name of the variable. So example list, and we want to see the first item in that list. So let's run that, and then let's check out. We can actually see entry 1 up here is a 1, but we can just run it down here. Entry 1 is a 1. Okay, so that's kind of the equivalent of what we would otherwise be doing in Excel. But now let's say we want to look at the second through the fourth entry. So we want to access second through fourth entries. So let's call this range 2 to 4. And we're going to use our example list. But now, when we find the indexes for this, the second through the fourth entries are indexes 1, 2, and 3. And so let me show you what would happen if you try to do index 1 through 3. It's not going to work. Let me show you why. Range 2 to 4. That only gives us 5 and 41.3. It doesn't give us that fourth entry. And the reason why is it's a little strange, but this is how Python works. When we are accessing multiple items, you have the list name here, and then you have a start and a stop. The start is the index where you want to actually start, but the stop is all the pieces all the items up until stop. So if we start on the first index and stop on the fourth, that means we're going to get 1, 2, and 3. And so in our case, now we want to access 2 through 4, so we need to add an extra, the second through the fourth entries, which are these last 3 here. So we want index 1, 2, and 3, and not including the fourth, even though there is no fourth index. But you're going to add the extra number there, and you'll get that third item. So it is a little strange the way Python does it, but I really think that this type of visualization can help you think about it. Wherever you want to stop, add 1 more to the index. Okay, so if we wanted to grab the first 3, so let's say we want to grab the first 2. We want 0 and 1, so let's access first and second items in list. So range 1, 2, and that's going to be example list. Where we want to start at the 0 index and go up to the third one, or sorry, the second. And so we get 0 and 1, but we don't get 2. And that's going to give us the 0 index is the first item in the list, and the second item is the first index. And so we go 0 and 1, but not including 2. So that's another way to think about it. Stop is just before we finish the slice, or you can think about it as going up to, but not including the number that we have for stop. So we don't want to include the second one, range 1, 2, and we get 1 and 5, the first 2 items in our list. Okay, otherwise, the other things are a little bit straightforward. Once you've got the indexing down, then you can start deleting or changing the indices. So if we want to replace the third entry with a new value, so that is, we want to change 41 to 3. We say, okay, we want our third entry, which is the second index, to be changed to a 3. We do that. Oops. We do that. And now instead of 1541.3 and 2, maybe this is 2. We changed that to 3 just now. And so you can do that. You can sort the list. Let me go ahead and I'll just grab all these. So you can now apply functions. So let's take the minimum. The minimum is a 1 in our list. So we can run that. We see that the minimum is a 1. We can sort it. So right now it's going 1, 5, 3, 2. Let's sort it. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 5. In Excel, if we were to do that, we would be, let's get rid of that. In Excel, if we want to sort that, we'll do, on the home page, you can filter and sort, or do Control-Shift-L, and then we want to sort the values from smallest to largest. That'll change. That also, in Excel, it changes the index. Now, the example list, it has new indexes. So if we've now sorted that, and we want to check out example list item number the second one in the list, which is index number 1, that's now 2, right? And previously it was 5. So yeah, otherwise here we can also delete items in the list with the delete function, and we're going to remove that third item, second index, so when we run this, the 3 will be going away. And that's what we're left with, 1, 2, 5. Okay, so that's lists. The one more item that we'll talk about, which I won't spend as much time talking about because we're gonna build larger or newer data types on top of that through some of the data science packages. But the last one that we have are dictionaries. And dictionaries are essentially, now we have what's starting to look a little bit more like a data set. Let me show you what we have here. The dictionary Python code is setting variables and setting lists equal to different variables. So now we have 3 lists called var1, var2, var3, and we create a dictionary off of that list. So the name is variable 1, the points is variable 2, past is variable 3. And so we can change that in Excel to name, points, past. And there are a couple different ways to do it. Actually, let's go ahead and code this together. So the last thing we have are dictionaries, and we're gonna first of all start to define and print a dictionary. So var1, variable 1, are these names. So we have Florian, I'm just going to abbreviate, and Daniel. Variable 2 are their, what seem to be their test scores. So we have a 96 and a 49. And variable 3 is whether or not they passed using Boolean values. So we have true and false. Oops, just one false. Okay, so there are our variables. Let's go ahead and create the dictionary. So example dictionary is equal to dict, and then we use name, so whatever we want to call it. The first one we're calling that name. That's variable 1, which we've already defined that list. Points is variable 2, and past is variable 3. Okay, and after we've done that, we can run all of these and check out example dictionary, and here's our dictionary. We could also look at the data type as we've done in the past. Well, let's go ahead and type it out. It's better to work together. So to access the data type, we can say type of example dict, and we see that it's a dictionary. Okay, so same thing, we can, just as we access different items in lists, so we would do the same thing with Excel. We would use VLOOKUPs again. So if we wanted to see Florian's score in some other part of the spreadsheet, we do a VLOOKUP. We're looking up Florian. We can take the table, or we could take the columns. That's what I like to do. 2 and 0 for exact match, 0 being false, and we get Florian's score or points. So to do that here in Python, let's access Daniel's points. So points for Dan is going to be equal to, we take our example dictionary, and within that dictionary we want to be looking at the points, which is defined as a list here inside the dictionary, and in those points we want to find Dan's. So for example, if we were to run this part just all by itself, we get the list. So that's the list within the dictionary. And so Daniel, there's Florian's, there's Daniel's, his is the second item in the list. That means it's index number 1. So if we run that, and then we go ahead and run points Dan, we get the first index, which is the second item in the list, and that's Dan's number of points, 49. Okay. Otherwise, we could change. We can add here. They add a new variable called grade. I'll throw that in there so you can see what it looks like. Example dict grade is equal to 1.3 and 4. We show that, and then let's look at the example dictionary again just by itself. So now we've added, in addition to the name, points, passed, and grade, we now have 1.3 and 4 as a separate variable. Okay, so that's a little bit about how Python works. There are more things to do in here. You can add points to Dan's score. So you take Dan's points, which is what we just did. We created that, and then you set it equal to itself, but plus 4 more, and that's going to give Dan some more points. So instead of being 49, it's going to be 49 plus 4, which is now 53. Okay, and you see it's also changing that full underlying list. So var2, which is what we started with, has now changed from 49 to 53 on Dan's points. Okay, I think that's going to be it for now. This is really starting to look a lot more like a data set that we would be more used to when we're doing statistics or econometrics. And what we're going to be doing in the next couple sections are starting to look at some of these Anaconda distribution pre-installed modules within Python called Numpy. Numpy being a module to deal with a lot of vectors and essentially kind of lists and matrices and things like that. And then we'll move on to pandas, and pandas, it creates a single object called a data frame out of a table like this. In some ways similar to a dictionary, but it's going to have a lot of these added functionalities within the pandas module that's going to allow us to do a whole bunch of econometrics. So that's coming up in the next video. Stay tuned for that, and I will see you then. Thanks.